you were talking earlier about kind of telling the story. And I think one thing that people don't realize that you do probably better than anyone I've ever seen is you practice. I've heard you literally pitch Liquid Death probably 500 times while I'm with you to people as you're handing the can. And it was all before the big last fundraise, right? And so like all of that repetition every time wasn't exactly the same, but it went from, hey, there's this water in this can that, was kind of what I would assume most people would start at, to by the time the 500th time I heard you say it, I was like, damn, that's pretty compelling. Like there's not that many people who are going to say no to that.
Well, the funny thing is you say practice, but it's like, my whole life, I've never, when I do talks, I don't write them down. It's always off the cuff. It drives people nuts, but it's mostly because I have a really bad memory. Like diagnosed with ADHD, bottom 16 percentile memory. It's just the pitch, it's adjustments based on people's reaction, right? And I just adjust. So when I say 7,000 no's, those 7,000 no's got to a couple hundred yeses, just because every time I'm just watching the reaction, I'm listening to the reaction. What do they have questions about? How can I essentially in advance answer the question in the pitch? So part of pitching is repetition. You can call it practice, but talking it out loud to people, normal people like Gen Pop, who aren't investors, do they understand what you're telling? Then through the lens of investor, every time you get the question like, I don't know, why this, if you can weave in your narrative the answer before you know the questions are going to come, what you want is a dialogue where you do a pitch for 5 minutes and the rest is just like conversation, not questions, because you've answered all of these things like why now, why this, why now, why would this work? I don't understand. If you tell your pitch in a way by kind of answering those questions along, you don't waste that 30 minutes you have with an investor. I always think, even though people say it's an hour, you really have, in my opinion, you have about 15 minutes, like, maybe less. So you got to capture them inside the first few minutes, 15 minutes. A meeting that goes longer than 1 hour, you have them. The last thing I'll say is there's a 24-hour rule I have. If an investor doesn't call you, text you, message you, hell, even like a tweet of yours, within 24 hours, it's a no. Move on. Fast no's is all I've ever asked from my investors. Like, I'm not offended if you pass. Like, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. What's the worst is slow no's, because it's like hope. To an entrepreneur, you're giving them hope, and that sucks. Like, just cut it so they can move on. Like, they need to move on. And so if you're an entrepreneur out there and you're pitching people, if they haven't gotten back to you in a week, don't bother. Like, don't waste energy hoping, right? And you're not a teacher. You are not, as an entrepreneur, built to educate everybody. So just because an investor asks the question does not mean you have to answer. It is not truth serum. Like, it is amazing when founders are like, I told them this, I'm like, why would you tell them everything? Like, they're not on the board. They're not an investor. That is information only for us. And so remember, the power dynamics is that I never say things like we're raising money. I don't like to say that, right? And when I talk to investor, I'm talking about we're looking for people who can be a part of this, right? Would you like the privilege to invest? Like, make it feel like it's a privilege. Like, they have to sell you a little bit. And it's a really mental thing. It's in the back of your head. If anybody out there who's raised money before, the moment you get a term sheet, all of a sudden you are so much more confident to the next investor. Nothing actually changed, right? Except your confidence into that next pitch. And all of a sudden, like, the momentum of the close happens. If you've ever raised money, take that feeling and try to pitch like that all the time. Pitch with confidence, not arrogance. There's a big difference. Don't pitch with arrogance. I hate that. Pitch with confidence that you're looking for somebody to be a part of this, that it should be, rightfully so, if you're building a company that's going to be worth more money, they are lucky to be investing, right? it's this relationship where you're saying, look, if you give us dollars, I'm in return make you more money. But the desperation thing never works. It's a really interesting dynamic and a psychology thing when raising money, that your shares and equity of the company is very, very valuable. Treat it like so, because if you treat it like it's not, why would an investor want to give you money if you don't even think it's valuable? So it's the subtleties, it's a lot of subconsciousness around that.